50 below zero. In the heart of the Yellowstone caldera, the margin between life and death is measured in degrees. For this pack of gray wolves, winter is not merely a season, it is a crucible. As dawn breaks, crushing hunger drives them toward the lethal, boiling springs. But by twilight, they will face a reckoning in the snow that not even the geothermal heat can solve. Before the sun dares to breach the jagged peaks of the Absaroka Range within the Rocky Mountains, the Yellowstone caldera lies locked in an immense, unforgiving freeze. It is 5 o'clock in the morning, and the air temperature has plummeted far below zero, creating brutal sub-zero temperatures that turn the atmosphere into an ocean of freezing mist. Yet this high-altitude wilderness in Yellowstone National Park is far from dormant. From the fractured earth of the geothermal geyser basin, boiling steam rises in towering columns, defying the crushing winter cold. This is an ecosystem defined by extreme contrast, where the subterranean fires of a dormant supervolcano collide violently with an ice age climate. Through this dense, swirling fog, the colossal silhouettes of an American bison herd materialize. Draped in heavy coats of thick rime ice, they move with a deliberate, ancient rhythm. Every exhalation sends thick clouds of vapor into the frigid dawn. They are the undeniable anchors of this frozen valley, enduring simply by turning their massive heads into the relentless wind. As muted blue light begins to penetrate the steam, an apex predator makes its silent, ghostly entrance. A highly coordinated gray wolf pack materializes from the vapor trail. Their thick winter fur is slick with moisture from the surrounding hot springs, their pale yellow eyes calculating and intensely focused. They move in a disciplined, single-file formation, a silent testament to their complex social structure and shared intelligence. At the edge of the dark pine forest, the alpha raises his heavy head. He releases a long, haunting howl that cuts sharply through the crisp, freezing air, a territorial proclamation echoing across the vast river valleys. The rest of the pack joins in a chilling chorus, their collective breath rising like smoke signals against the snow. From the high canopy above, the resonant, guttural croak of a common raven answers, acting as an aerial scout in a complex, mutualistic dance of common raven scavenging and wolf hunting. Down in the basin, the rushing waters of the Yellowstone River stubbornly refuse to freeze, kept constantly flowing by deep thermal springs. Here, a towering bull moose, adorned with massive frost-covered antlers, wades deeply into the icy currents. He dips his heavy muzzle to drink, shaking freezing droplets from his dark coat. The river edges teem with unexpected life. Sleek North American river otters slide playfully across jagged ice shelves, their dense, waterproof fur insulating them against the lethal chill. In the shallow, a tiny American dipper bobs rhythmically on an ice-encrusted stone, repeatedly plunging into the frigid rapids to forage. As the sun finally paints the grand prismatic spring in brilliant shades of dawn, the wolves retreat. They vanish into the snow-laden lodgepole pines, resting in the shadows to conserve vital metabolic energy before the true trials of the morning begin. By 8 o'clock, bright diffused light spreads across the expansive canvas of the Hayden Valley. The sky remains entirely overcast, trapping the biting cold in a stark, low-contrast atmosphere. This is the crucial time of morning vitality, a fleeting window for foraging before deep cold fully tightens its grip. Immense herds of American bison and towering elk are constantly moving, driven by the harsh realities of the winter elk migration, transforming the flat valley floor into a dynamic sea of dark bodies against blinding snow. A massive bull elk pauses to posture, his resonant bugle echoing for miles, thick steam billowing from his mouth. High on the distant wind-swept ridges, the wolves have emerged from their brief rest. They lie perfectly still, silently observing the massive herds shifting in the valley below. They are infinitely patient strategists, waiting for the precise moment when the incredibly deep snowpack will eventually betray their prey. Along the quiet edges of a secluded pond, the architectural mastery of the American beaver is proudly displayed. A snow-covered lodge rises like a fortress from the solid ice. An adult beaver briefly surfaces into the freezing air, clutching a large willow branch in its powerful jaws, sharp orange incisors rapidly stripping nutritious bark. It is a brief moment of necessary vulnerability before slipping effortlessly back into the dark, protective waters beneath the thick ice. Suddenly, the deceptive peace of the valley is shattered. The wolf pack initiates their descent, transitioning instantly from quiet observation to an explosive full-speed sprint across the deep powder. Their massive paws act like natural snowshoes, allowing them to glide effortlessly. A small herd of elk panics, their slender legs plunging disastrously deep into the soft, unforgiving drifts. The wolves execute a flawless flanking maneuver, a masterclass in carnivore hunting strategy, fanning out with terrifying speed and precision. Every muscle in the lead wolf's body is visible, its yellow eyes locked relentlessly onto the target as it effortlessly leaps over a frozen log. While this dramatic hunt unfolds, smaller predators engage in entirely different warfare. In a nearby meadow, a bright orange-red fox stops dead in its tracks. It tilts its head, large ears swiveling to pinpoint the microscopic scratching of a vole hidden deep beneath packed snow. In one graceful movement, the fox leaps high into the air, diving headfirst into the white powder to claim its vital prize. Not far away, a thick-coated coyote trots steadily along icy riverbanks, an opportunistic survivor scanning the frozen landscape for winter scraps. From the frosted branches of a dead pine tree, a massive bald eagle looks down. With a heavy thrust of its broad wings, it launches into the overcast sky, soaring effortlessly on invisible thermal currents, a silent sentry presiding over the relentless cycle of life and death playing out below. As the pale sun reaches its zenith shortly after noon, flat natural light bathes the wilderness in a stark, muted palette. To survive the paralyzing cold that persists even at midday, the animals of the caldera must desperately seek shelter. At the lower geyser basin, a remarkable and bizarre adaptation for extreme winter survival occurs. Survival instincts lead the massive American bison directly to the dangerous edges of steaming fumaroles and violently bubbling mud pots. Completely encrusted in thick white frost, these colossal beasts stand perfectly still, sleeping on their feet next to a boiling thermal vent, gratefully absorbing the radiant geothermal heat emanating from the dangerously thin crust. The gray wolf pack has adopted a remarkably similar strategy. Deep within the thermal basin, they lie curled together in a tight, inseparable knot on a patch of bare, warm, mineral earth. Their thick winter fur gently rises and falls with every slow, deliberate breath, their dark bodies momentarily swallowed by massive clouds of thick, sulfurous steam rolling heavily across the ground. Here, the subterranean heat provides a crucial reprieve, allowing the exhausted pack to conserve massive amounts of metabolic energy. Inside the dense, shadowy sanctuary of the lodgepole pine forest, life adopts an entirely different method of endurance. A massive herd of elk has retreated deep into the timberline to escape the punishing, biting wind. Beneath the protective canopy of heavy, snow-laden branches, a magnificent bull elk rests in a shallow hollow, peacefully chewing his cud, his long eyelashes heavy with delicate ice crystals. Nearby, a delicate mule deer steps incredibly slowly and deliberately through the untouched powder, lifting its long legs high to avoid any unnecessary exertion in the frozen timber. Out on the exposed, unforgiving northern plains of the Lamar Valley, there is absolutely no shelter to be found. A resilient group of pronghorn faces the full, terrifying wrath of a severe ground blizzard. Standing completely motionless on the slick ice of an exposed ridge, they lower their heads directly into the howling gale. Their specialized hollow hairs puff up to create a highly effective layer of insulation against the lethal wind chill. As whiteout conditions completely consume the landscape, turning the sky and ground into a blinding, disorienting expanse, they stand firmly like ancient statues of endurance. Yet, even in this deepest freeze, pockets of liquid life miraculously persist. A crystal-clear spring creek, warmed by unseen geothermal fissures, flows gently over colorful pebbles. Beneath the rippling, ice-free surface, a large cutthroat trout holds steady in the gentle current, its gills flaring rhythmically. On a snow-capped rock just above the water, a river otter vigorously grooms its thick, wet fur, preparing for the cooling afternoon. In the adjacent, wind-swept snowfield, a solitary coyote stands frozen, listening intently, before frantically digging into the hard-packed drifts to secure its meager, hard-won midday meal. By 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the flat, diffused daylight begins its inevitable fade, casting warm, muted tones across the overcast sky. As the air cools even further, a renewed sense of desperate urgency sweeps through the caldera. In the incredibly deep snowfields lying below the towering Absaroka Mountains, the American bison are on the move. They relentlessly plow through chest-deep drifts using pure brute strength, carving a colossal, winding trench through the vast white landscape. The highly intelligent gray wolf pack capitalizes immediately on this monumental effort. Instead of fighting the exhausting deep powder themselves, the wolves fall into a strict single-file line, effortlessly trotting down the exact trench just carved by the bison. Reaching a high, frosted ridge overlooking the valley, the wolves pause. They spread out tactically, their dark silhouettes stark and intimidating against the fading afternoon light. A single wolf creeps slowly down the snowy hillside, keeping its belly incredibly low to the ground, stalking forward in almost absolute silence, stepping delicately to avoid snapping a single frozen twig. The pursuit reignites with explosive, terrifying ferocity. The wolves burst into a full-speed sprint, their powerful legs kicking up massive clouds of white powder. The elk run in sheer, uncoordinated panic. The wolves execute a masterful flanking maneuver, peeling off to herd their desperate prey directly toward the treacherous edge of the semi-frozen river. Amidst this high-stakes chase, the intricate balance of the Yellowstone ecosystem persists in the strangest of isolated microclimates. Near a violently bubbling hot spring, entirely surrounded by towering snow walls, geothermal heat has created an impossible winter oasis. Here, a common garter snake miraculously survives the winter by slowly uncoiling its striped body on a perfectly warm rock. Back at the river's edge, the panicked elk violently plunge into the rushing, ice-cold currents. The wolves skid to a sudden halt on the high snowbank. The rushing water is simply too dangerous and freezing to cross. Exhausted, the alpha wolf stands perfectly still, panting heavily, forced to watch helplessly as the elk escape to the distant, blurred safety of the far bank. As the clock passes 5:15, the golden hour arrives, painting the wilderness in dusty, muted orange and deep blue hues. The wolf pack turns away from the rushing river, walking slowly back into the elongating shadows of the pine forest. High above, a common raven sits silently on a frosted branch, its dark profile striking against the fading sky. In the slow-moving shallows, a towering moose stands completely still, the dark water perfectly reflecting the fiery colors of descending dusk. But the haunting beauty of twilight brings a lethal consequence. As the last remnants of daylight vanish, the temperature plummets violently into the deep freeze of the winter night. By 6 o'clock, the world is submerged in heavy, muted blue darkness. A lone coyote wanders through the empty snowfield, becoming nothing more than a passing shadow. Massive herds of elk bed down tightly together, sharing vital collective body heat. A red fox curls into a perfect ball, nose tucked beneath its bushy tail, quickly becoming covered in freezing twilight frost. The wolves, however, are creatures of the dark. They navigate the perfectly smooth, pitch-black surface of a frozen lake in a silent line, rough paw pads gripping the treacherous ice with evolutionary perfection. Above them, imposing silhouettes of bighorn sheep stand like ancient sentinels on jagged, snow-covered cliffs, staring into the black abyss of the valley below. As the deep blue gives way to a heavily bruised purple twilight, the atmospheric cold interacts violently with the boiling geothermal waters. The result is truly otherworldly. Massive columns of thick steam rise hundreds of feet into the freezing air, glowing faintly with the last ambient light. The wolf pack walks directly into this swirling wall of glowing vapor, momentarily vanishing before regrouping on the warm mineral earth. In a nearby thermal pool, an American beaver swims silently, creating a gentle wake that ripples the purple reflection. Suddenly, the alpha wolf stands upright. The entire pack rises in absolute unison. Their ears swivel towards a deep, subterranean rumbling, shaking the very crust of the earth. They move to the edge of the main vent just as a thick wave of boiling water surges violently over the mineral lip. It is exactly 7 o'clock in the evening. The main geyser erupts with an explosive, deafening roar, shooting a colossal column of boiling water and steam high into the deeply bruised purple night sky. The sheer elemental power is magnificent. Yet the gray wolf pack stands their ground, completely unfazed. In the ultimate display of wild resilience, the alpha throws his head back and delivers a powerful, haunting howl that cuts cleanly through the chaotic roar of the erupting earth. Oh! The entire pack stands closely together, a breathtaking silhouette against the intensely glowing steam column. As the first stars pierce the dark sky, the geyser's roar slowly fades into the pure, freezing howl of the winter wind, closing another relentless day of survival in the caldera. The pack has survived the freezing caldera tonight, but as the winter snows eventually begin to melt, a very different apex predator awakens from its slumber beneath the earth. To see how these wolves navigate the terrifying emergence of a 600-pound grizzly, click the video on your screen now. The true war for Yellowstone is just beginning.